Today we're going to be doing something that I've been waiting for over a year for, which is unboxing the Flair 58. We're going to go over and unboxing my initial impressions on the Flair 58, but before we do that, please like and subscribe this video. It helps me produce more content for you guys. So let's go ahead and dive in. I do want to give a fair warning. I made a mistake the first time, so I needed to retake this. So I'm still going to give my initial impressions just like it was when I opened the box, but this is after I've already opened it. Just want to give a fair warning. So first off, my initial impression is this box is way bigger than I expected. I was expecting to hopefully maybe just put the Flair in here to travel with, and it wouldn't be as ideal as the Flair Pro 2, but it would still get the job done. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this open, and right on top here, it's a lot heavier than I thought. We have the drip tray. We have some bolts and some Allen wrenches here in the instructions, and some piece of cardboard right here. So we're going to put this off to the side. In here we have this is the electronic part for the Flair to give it its preheating abilities, and we have the power brick. The cables are the only main thing that I didn't really wrap up as well. So we're going to dive into that in just a second. We got the tamper, which my initial impressions on this is I thought this was going to be like more of a rubberized thing, but it's kind of like, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's a lot heftier than I imagined, and it feels a lot better than I imagined, which is really great for most espresso machines. Don't really come with a nice tamper starting off with. It's usually a piece of plastic, so this feels like a nice upgrade in that. We got the pressure gauge right here, and we have the wooden bottomless portafilter that comes in here, and this is a standard 58 millimeter size, which I'm really excited for. Initially, this thing feels substantially better than I thought it was. They mentioned that, I thought I read somewhere that it would feel a little light because they needed to cut costs a little bit somewhere, but this feels a lot heavier than I thought it would. It reminds me a lot of my Nuova Simonelli Oscar portafilter, and it feels good and hefty. The wood feels decent. It's not as high quality as it could be, but I'm okay with that based off of the price. Here we have the first piece right here, which is the top lever part. Again, with the wood accents on the end, and it looks like there's a little, it's not the most perfect wood accents on there, but it's nice. I noticed, the first thing I noticed is the grip on here is actually like silicone, so it feels a lot better to grab onto than the metal that I thought this was going to be. I thought this was black metal with wooden caps on the end of it, so this feels a lot nicer than I thought. And we got the brew head right here, so we have the kind of heating element attached to. This is what the bottom of this brew cylinder looks like, so it looks pretty nice, pretty hefty. Reminds me a lot of an actual machine where you get the shower head in there, so that's nice. And we have the silicone cap for it if you choose to preheat up with water rather than just preheat it up with the electronic components on the side of it. And then now we have the base to it right here. And let's go ahead and put this together and see what it looks like fully assembled. So find the Allen key here, and it has two massive bolts, and it looks like it has two Allen keys, one bigger one for these bolts and a smaller one for some of the other bolts that are throughout the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out how exactly I'm going to do this. And again, this Flair is meant to not be taken apart like the ones in prior years. So it's meant to kind of be put together once and left together in a lot of ways. Although this doesn't seem so hard to put together, it's literally two bolts on the bottom that you can see right now. And then simply just turn, and we'll see how long this takes me, but this is actually very quick to put together because this is basically the only thing that really needs to be done here. So initially this does seem quite a bit bigger than my Flair Pro 2, which I expected because they did say due to the more shallow portafilter, since it's a 58 millimeter basket, the same 18 grams is going to be spread out further than the 18 grams on the Flair Pro 2 or whatever you would put in your signature or classic. So to compensate for the finer you have to grind, the more force you really need to hit that 9 bars of pressure. So what they did was they made this base substantially heftier and wider, and they made the lever on this a little bit longer to give you some more grip for when you are pushing down on it to make it a little bit easier. So we're going to see how that plays out and what that actually feels like pulling a shot later on. Remember, this is also a good time to subscribe if you haven't. One of the reasons for that is this is going head to head with the Flair Pro 2 on my channel here a little bit later, as well as the Cafe Lat robot. And on top of those 2 videos that are coming out comparing all 3 of these machines together, the Pro 2, the 58, and the robot, we are also going to do a full lineup of all the Flairs released from the Neo, the Classic, the Signature, the Pro, and the 58. We're going to have them all side by side here on the channel, and we're going to explain which one you should buy for what reason and why. So remember to subscribe and stay tuned for that. So first impression after I just put this together is I'm not entirely sure where this little hook, when you drop the arm, it either hits and sets on this edge here. I don't know if that's going to get worn out on the rubber when it's just kind of constantly putting that pressure. Thankfully, this top part doesn't hit the lever, so it's not going to scratch there. Or I don't know if you should just drop it, which I kind of maybe expect some scratches here down the road. Or you could drop it in there like that, but the lever's higher. So I'm not sure exactly. It's a little strange to me. And we have this pressure gauge here, which you lock in and turn, and then this little hook goes over this pressure gauge here, and then you push down on this lever, which this actually feels so much more comfortable than I thought. And then when you're done with your shot, you can simply pull back up and take the pressure gauge off here. I'm not entirely sure whether you should store it with the pressure gauge in there or not on this machine. I never did with my prior Pro 2s, but this one is a little different, and it seems like it stores a lot better like this. So if you have a 58, what are you doing with your 58? Are you storing it like this, or are you storing it pulled up and the pressure gauge completely removed in there? So I'm just going to go ahead and put that down in here. This feels great. I want to check the tamper real quick and see. So there's a little bit of room on the tamper, but honestly, it's really close. This doesn't seem, my guess is it's not going to be much different than my Barista Hustle tamper, which I chose because one of my friends that works at a good specialty coffee shop in the area, that's what he uses every single day for work. So that's what I picked up for my other machines here at home. But this feels like the fit is really, really good for that, so I'm excited to see how that fits. So let's go ahead and put the portafilter in. So what you're going to see here is this is going to go off to the side like that, which isn't traditional on an espresso machine typically, but the reason for that is I'm assuming because the arm is going to come down like this, so that's going to be in the way there. If it was straightforward like that, you wouldn't want your hand hitting, vice versa, and you wouldn't want it difficult to pull out. So we got this little wire that comes back, and one of the things I'm excited for is they also announced the release of the Flair 58X, and the Flair 58X has no heating element on it, so it's a little bit different than that, but the price of the Flair 58X is $450, which, for those of you who don't know, that is the same price as the Cafe Lat robot with the pressure gauge. And that makes a very, very interesting thing that I'm going to see how this compares without even using this heating element, but heating with the kettle or something like that compared to what the workflow would be on the Cafe Lat robot, to see which one I like more, which is going to be a very interesting comparison, because one feature this has that no other manual espresso machine that I can think of, it has a true traditional 58 millimeter portafilter. The Cafe Lat robot claims to own, a lot of people I hear say it has a 58 millimeter portafilter, but it has a 57.5, I believe, which makes it slightly too small to fit a traditional tamper and distribution tools in there, so you have to get some custom made. So this is the block here. which this seems hefty and huge. This is honestly, when I think of the Flair and when I originally saw this attachment here on the back, my first disappointment was I have to plug this in. The reason why I'm concerned about that a little bit is because I love the minimalistic look on a coffee counter. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that my coffee counter is a little chaotic right now. I have a few too many machines out there that I've been kind of testing for YouTube and things like that. But the thing that I love about the old Flair is at one point all I had to do was plug in a kettle. I had a hand grinder and my Flair was manual, so the only cord that I needed was from my kettle going to the wall. Now I've kind of changed my setup a little bit, so I use a Niche Zero as my grinder, which plugs into the wall. I have a Stag EKG kettle, which plugs into the wall. I have this now, which plugs in the wall, so that's 3 devices. If you used a traditional machine, you would use just that device plugged into the wall, and then your grinder. Unless you made pour-overs a lot, then you'd have a kettle, so it kind of evens out. But there's no way to really block this cable. So I'm putting this on my kitchen counter, which means I can't drop the cords back behind like my coffee bar. That will change at some point once I get a house and things like that. But that's a concern right off the bat, is where the heck I'm going to hide this massive power brick for this. And I'm assuming the reason that there's this power brick is because it does not have any room on the inside of the Flair to really store all that power like a traditional machine would, say like the Ranchillo Silvia or the Gaga Classic or whatever other machine that there was, a Breville machine. They can store all that heating and electronics and stuff inside the machine, versus this one is all right here in there. But overall, I think this feels well. Here's what the drip tray looks like here. This is supposedly supposed to fit an Akaya lunar scale. I don't like how this is not attached to it in a lot of ways, because if you move it, like, it's a little, I don't know, it's a little weird. It looks a little cheap, but we'll see. I'm sure there's a reason they designed it like this, so we'll see what I think about it later on in the video, but this later on when I do a full review of this. But overall, this feels well. I'm really, really excited about this. One of the things that I love about Flair, and I've used Flairs for 4 years now, give or take, and they do a good job of listening to customers. So this one was clearly meant to leave on your counter because it's not supposed to be taken apart, and the box is big and it doesn't come with a travel case like all the other ones. But I remember they put on a Facebook group called Brew with Flair, which is a discussion group for anybody who owns a Flair or is interested in a Flair to get some more information about it from actual users for it. So they put in that group a question of what they want to see in the next Flair. One of the big ones was this right here, which they came in great with, is the 58 millimeter Portafilter. And I heard that the basket on here is really, really good. I have a VST. I'm not planning on using it and putting it in this Portafilter starting off. We'll see if that changes down the road, but I've heard great things about the stock basket that comes in there, so that's not going to be anything that you need to upgrade. I feel like you might not even need to upgrade the tamper right away, which is a nice feature. So basically you need your kettle and your grinder and you're good to go. Maybe something to steam milk if you're going that route. But anyway, they asked people that use Flairs what they wanted. 58 millimeter basket was on there. I believe something to a way that like it has better heat retention. Typically you really, really had to heat up that brew head on the Flair Pro 2 and Signature to get it as hot as possible so you could have the best quality shot, and that's one of the things that is difficult to do in a manual machine. So they did fix that with the button right here, which this button feels a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I also thought you'd maybe have to unscrew this entirely to basically move your Flair onto your counter and whatnot, but it looks like you can just simply plug that. Let's see here. But they really listened to Flair's customers with the 58 millimeter Portafilter, the better way to heat the Flair, which is going to be in this right here. And one of the personal things that I wanted that I'm super thrilled about is I specifically asked for a wooden Portafilter handle. Whether they did that because I asked for it or not, I don't really care because I got a wooden portafilter handle, and I'm super excited for it. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. It's got a little green light, notifies you're plugged in, and you're going to tap. I didn't read the instructions. So you're going to hold that, and then that first button is going to be your lowest temperature on there, and this is going to heat up there. The second button, it'll be a little bit hotter, and the third button will be the highest temperature. And once that green light stops flashing, you are good to go to brew your coffee. They said, I've heard somewhere, I don't know, when I keep saying they, I just mean people. I heard somewhere that you needed to wait about 10 minutes for this thing to fully heat up. We're going to really see that because I noticed on my Nuova Seminelli Oscar, which is a heat exchange machine that cost somewhere around $1,500 when it was new 10 years ago or so. I bought it used. But I like to put my portafilter inside the brew head while it's heating up, and I typically wait 30 minutes or so for that other machine, but I have it set on a timer, and I can set it up remotely so I can turn it on and preheat it wherever I'm at with the simple Amazon plug. But I'm curious to see how long this is going to take to heat up this entire... This is already starting to feel warm just in that few seconds that I plugged it in. I'm interested to see how long it takes for this entire portafilter to feel warm. At about 30 minutes of my Oscar heating up, I could feel it in the handle a little bit there. So that's my first impressions of it. Overall, it feels great. I'm a little confused about how this is supposed to be in there. Maybe somebody can help me out in the comments. The portafilter seems great. They did a lot of the things that a lot of people asked for. I even heard people complain about it being plugged in, so they did listen to that feedback, and they even added a cheaper option without the heating element in there. So Flair, good job of doing what you've done, and good job with your customer service and listening to what people want. If you guys have any questions on the Flair, what you want to see it next to, what questions you have, I would love to hear your feedback on this little hook thing and how you guys have it set up at home. That's really hot now. It's not quite heated up. But let me know any questions you have, anything you want to see in a review down the road here, and I would love to answer those questions as best as I can and maybe put out a few videos based on what you need. So again, if you could please like and subscribe. I got some great content comparing this to the Flair Pro 2, the robot, and a couple other machines down the road. So I'm excited to see how this thing compares. It's been a long wait for this. I saw the first leak back in March of 2019. So a little over a year now, and it's finally here, and I'm thrilled with it. And I'm excited to see this on my counter, and I'm excited to see how well it does. So thank you for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.